Ministry about when the crisis will be over. Danaa Refinery to resume operations in March. President Mahama takes steps to establish birthday of Ghana's founding president a statutory holiday. Parliament wants childhood cancers included in list of ailments to be covered by National Health Insurance Scheme. All these plus sports, showbiz and international news coming up in the next hour. Now, you should count yourself fortunate to be watching this bulletin right now, as many others have been denied the opportunity because of the ongoing load shedding exercise prompted by a shortfall in the electricity generated. The situation, despite several assurances, is yet to be resolved, causing a lot of inconvenience for individuals and businesses. Tonight, we get an update on the situation and hopefully some assurance as to when the problem will be over. Now, before then, though, in the Ashanti region, we're going over to the Ashanti region where residents and businesses in Kumasi have been complaining about the losses they're incurring as a result of the ongoing load shedding exercise. A good number of them say they often have to idle about because there is no electricity to facilitate their work, whilst others say they're having to pay twice what they spend on electricity to keep their generators, an expense they say is draining them. We'll be coming a lot later to that particular story, which reflects the general situation across the country. But right now I have in the studio with me Edward Barr. He is the Public Relations Officer for the Energy Ministry, and he's going to give us some insight as to what exactly is happening. Good evening and welcome to our studios, Mr. Bauer.
Good evening, Israel.
All right, first of all, can you explain to us why this load shedding is not coming to an end despite all the assurances we've been getting from officialdom?
Yeah, thank you very much. You definitely will recall that August 28th, we were told that the West Africa gas pipeline that was supposed to be supplying us with natural gas had a problem in terms of it. There was a problem with it. Since then, WAPCO has been working on it. To cut a long story short, the truth of the matter is that we still do not have gas coming from Nigeria. And so in as much as we as a country have tried to put up a lot of plans to be able to run on certain specific fuels, we are unable to run most of those gens in at their full capacity because one, we do not have the natural gas, and two, in terms of the crude oil, we are running at a very tight schedule, and therefore...
when you say tight schedule, what exactly do you mean?
You see, granted that we have gas coming into the country, for example, most of the VRA plants are dual-fueled machines, in that they can use light crude oil or natural gas. So normally, when you have enough gas coming from Nigeria, we normally will build our stock levels in terms of crude, say that anytime there's a problem with natural gas, we can always rely on crude. But unfortunately, since August, we've not been having natural gas, so definitely we've been running on the crude. Now, when the crude comes, when you import the crude, it takes at least 10 days for you to treat the crude and use it in the gens. You can't just take the crude and start using. So because of that, in terms of our stock levels are coming down. And so anytime there's a delay, for example, in the delivery of a cargo, you have a challenge. And so most of the gens now are not running at their full capacity. You may have, for example, a gen that is supposed to produce about 120 megawatts. I'm just giving an example. It may be running only about 80 megawatts because you are not running at full load because you do not have the fuel. So primarily the reason has to do with the challenge of fuel.
No, the challenge of fuel, I mean, I can't imagine if we're having a situation where we know that we have this challenge, you'd expect that the crude oil will come in at a particular time. If we have the planning, on point, we should be having these challenges?
Yeah, obviously there's always planning that is done. That you know that your suppliers, you tell your suppliers that on this particular day we expect this cargo to come. But there are two factors. One factor is that you have a situation where you don't have control over, assuming that you are bringing it from Nigeria, you have no control over what happens in Nigeria in terms of that. Secondly, we have one jetty. The whole country has only one jetty. That when you bring the crude, in terms of discharging it, LPG, diesel, petrol, crude. So when even a cargo arrives, and you have another ship there that is discharging a particular product, it has to wait. Or that's why I spoke about tight timelines. So that anytime there's the slightest delay, you have a problem of fuel levels.
Okay. Now, tell me, how much electricity do we need as a country? How much do we have? What's the shortfall? How much do we need to generate, to add, to bring us up to the level, the optimal level?
At the last briefing that we had from Gridco, that was last week or so, our peak demand, and when we talk about peak demand, between 6 in the evening till around 11, 12. These days, the peak is even moving to midnight. We in terms of the amount of power we consume is 1,784. So that's at the peak demand. So that's what you always use as a basis of what the amount you need. As we speak now, the truth of the matter is that we are now producing roughly around 1,400, 1,500 megawatts. So we have a shortfall of between 200, 300, depending on the day.
What is accounting for the shortfall?
The shortfall is basically based on the fact that we have
the understanding we had was that because the West African gas pipeline went offline and we're not getting gas from WAPCO, Asogli went off.
Asogli went
so
off.
apart from Asogli, which produces a maximum of 200 megawatts, what else has gone off?
Apart from Asogli, what we do have is that we have all these other units that are not producing power at their full capacity. That was the example I was giving you, that most of them are not producing. Even since then, we've added Senate, the one in Tema, which is a subsidiary of SNET that we have, which is giving us 126. We are going to add in the next week the T3, which is 132. The issue is not about the gens. The issue is about the fuel. So even though you even have these gens sitting there, they can't run at full load.
Interesting. Now, let's move on to this other story. Even as many grapple with the erratic electricity supplies to John users learned, emergency power generators acquired some 5 years ago to augment supply appear abandoned at the site in Teman. The machines, which came to be known as toy machines, could collectively generate a significant amount of electricity to augment the situation. Joy News has been to the site to see these machines.
Sources tell Joy News the 127 diesel generators were purchased at a cost of $101 million by the state in 2007. They were brought in to shore up the country's electricity supply, which was at critical levels during the energy crisis at the time. They comprise 54 40-footer containers, 47 20-footer containers, as well as 26 skid-mounted generators. Though a few have been distributed to locations in Kumasi, Tamale, Accra and Bolgatanga, majority of the generators idle here at the Tema VRA power plant. The generators, though very expensive, to run as part of the national grid could prove very critical as backups for critical installations that can't do without electricity, such as health facilities. With capacities ranging between 1 and 2.2 megawatts, a single unit could power the whole of Kolebu Teaching Hospital. According to a VRA source, the plan was to distribute the generators to institutions after the 2007 energy crisis, but 5 years on, many are still unused. But restarting these machines won't be so cheap. They would first have to be overhauled at a cost of up to $136,000 each. Experts have blamed the abuse of the machines during the power crisis for the challenges encountered during their use in 2007, explaining that as emergency units, they shouldn't have been run around the clock for several days as they need to undergo regular maintenance after a few days. Energy experts meanwhile believe government, as a matter of urgency, should implement an electricity generation plan to solve the country's consistent power problems. They say, with no reserve capacity, existing plants serving the country will be run to fail since maintenance cannot be done on them.
Now, we're back in the studio with Edward Barr. He's a public relations officer at the Energy Ministry. Now, you've just seen the story about the emergency power plants, also known as toy machines. Why are we not able to deploy these generators to augment the situation?
First and foremost, we must state that
collectively, my understanding is that they produce some more than 100 megawatts.
I'm not too
together.
sure. I'm not too sure about the figure, but I do
about,
know that each one was roughly about it's about 1.2 maximum.
2.2 megawatts.
Yes, a megawatt. So I'm not too sure about that. But you remember.
So if we have 100,
these are not installed generation capacity. They are not found. They are not.
At a point, they were a part.
Yes,
of the generation capacity.
When they use the word emergency, it is emergency. That is the first point. But you see, when these plants were brought in, immediately after the crisis in 2007, 2008, 2007, yeah, immediately the crisis were over. Most of these gens were sent to strategic places. For example, Konfonochi, the stadium, most of these national institutions.
A few were sent because the understanding, the story, and the story you just saw was a visual we just got in from the site.
And I'm going to make that
and
point.
There are about more than 47 of them. So if you're saying most of them were sent, a significant number of them
are run on diesel. These gens are run on diesel.
Understood.
And diesel is more expensive even than light crude. Israel, the truth is that in this country now, every day, the state spends $2.7 million to generate power for us, just because of the fact that we don't have a natural gas.
We found ourselves in a crisis situation.
So in the crisis situation, you need to still ensure that the resources are within manageable levels. We are talking before the elections. We deployed these ones. We deployed them into the system to ensure, because this was something that could, assuming that we had problems with power, could be very injurious to our very safety in terms of national security and what have you. And therefore, we needed lights in almost every place. That is understandable, and therefore, we needed to deploy all our resources. But as we speak,
are you sure we use them? Because our checks suggest that these machines, as they are, if we would have to start them again, we'd have to overhaul them. And as you heard in the story, it's going to cost like 136,000 to overhaul
we use some of them as part of it.
Some of them?
Yes, we use some of them. Obviously, the number we brought in terms of importation are not still the same number that we have now. I just give you examples that there are some institutions that we have sent these things there. So, for example, if you were supposed to have a blackout, we expect that Konfonochi should have a standby generator, which is one of these ones. These are emergency gens. They are not part of the installed.
And talking about the emergency situations, yes. I mean Konfonochi and the other installations having them, why can't we send them to the rest of the installations that would need them? The Pantang Hospital, for instance, doesn't have one. Several other installations in the country.
I agree with you, and I wouldn't contest that. But the point I'm just trying to make is that these are national assets that we keep them as emergencies. And I gave you one of the emergency situations we had to do with elections, that we deploy them for that. And therefore, we look at them as and when we need them, we deploy them for such situations.
We have emergencies as it is now, because yes, the elections are over, but we're still having an emergency.
Yeah, but they are, I agree with you. And I do not want to pretend that things are right now. But see that we still have situations where are still manageable, that we do not need to really do this.
Can you tell us, can you give us any assurance as to when all this is going to be over?
Based on the vibe we are getting from West Africa Gas Pipeline Company, that's WAPCO, we are told that by the end of March, first week of April, they should commence supplying us gas. Because as we speak now, they have outsourced the commissioning of the pipeline to a private contractor.
What if that deadline doesn't materialize?
They say we are doing that at the same time, also looking at our gas processing plant in Etuebo, in the Western region. That all things being equal.
What if
that doesn't
all
happen?
Things are not equal?
Then it means that as a country we need to still mobilize more resources to ensure that we get light crude oil and diesel to power our gens.
Can you give us any firm date?
I am not able to give you firm dates because I do not have control over WAPCO. And so that is where the problem is.
All right. Thank you very much. You heard Edward Bar. He's the Public Relations Officer at the Energy Ministry. Unfortunately, he's unable to give us any firm deadlines as to when this load shedding is going to be over. We're just hoping that it's over as soon as possible. You're watching the Primetime News on the Joy News channel. We'll be back after this. Parliament has called for the inclusion of childhood cancers among the list of ailments under the National Health Insurance Scheme. Former Minister of Health and Member of Parliament for Wa West, Joseph Yele identified childhood cancer as one of the leading causes of infant mortality in the country, noting that its inclusion in the NHIS could help bring some respite to parents who can't afford treatment.
Health experts maintain that childhood cancers can be cured provided prompt and essential treatment is accessible. In our country, there is no comprehensive statistical data on the magnitude of childhood cancers, but using estimates from incidence data in more developed countries, about 1 in 500 children will be affected. In other words, it is estimated that countries over 1,000 children below the age of 15 are affected by cancer yearly in Ghana.
There was, however, debate on the floor of Parliament as to whether the NHIS is well-resourced to meet the growing demands.
The problem we however face in this country is the fact that it doesn't appear that Ghana is up to the task in this early detection and early treatment of cancer appearing in children. And so in most instances, in places where you are not close to the city, you are seen to be on your deathbed once you catch cancer.
We are very much aware of the problems that have been created under the running of the National Health Insurance. With respect for you, I will not go there. But then, it is very necessary that we look at the National Health Insurance Scheme itself, so we'll be able to take on board what the maker of the statement said.
We are talking about childhood cancer. He is talking about whether National Health Insurance is doing well in Asante region or not. He's completely out of order because it is doing well. I'm also from Asante region, and precisely with the same place with him, we are all from Kumasi. So you should speak to the relevant issue, which is childhood cancer.
The House also adopted the report of leadership on the construction of both the ECOWAS and the Pan-African Parliament.
ECOWAS and Pan-African Parliament are very clear. They are national representations. And immediately you leave the borders of Ghana, you are representing the national parliament of Ghana and not majority or minority.
There were statements in the House about increasing road accidents on the George Walker Bush Highway.
A consultant on the project, and if he's correct, that's why I got mad, he's indicating that the design said there must be 7 overhead bridges. 7. That's a consultant. And it was not done because somehow we were waiting for the MCA money to do all the 7, which was not sufficient. So, Speaker, we don't have to have deaths on both sides to take the decision that this is so important that we'll find the money. So, Speaker, this Parliament must resolve when the budget comes that we put in money to make sure that the 5 other overheads are done. That is when we'll be moving forward.
The House called for government intervention for the construction of an overhead bridge at the La Paz end of the road and the erection of several road signs to reduce the road accidents on the highway.
A mental health board is to be set up to see to the implementation of the recently passed Mental Health Act. The board is expected to provide a seed fund to address some of the challenges faced by mental health institutions in the country. This was announced by the Minister of Health, Sherry Ayite, after a facility tour of the Accra Psychiatric Hospital to assess security, which seems to have deteriorated in recent times.
The Accra Psychiatric Hospital, with an inpatient population of over 1,000 currently, has 7 doctors, 3 pharmacists, 5 medical assistants and about 250 nurses manning the various wards and units. The nurse-to-patient ratio, which should be 1:4, is now 1:40. The health minister's visit comes after a recent attack of 2 nurses by a patient. One nurse was injured in the eye, whilst the other got injured on the arm.
Looking at the patient, one, she's weak. She's on IV infusion, and then she's just giving birth, so she's weak. It never occurred to me that she could even do such a thing. So I was like, okay, I was helping her to sleep on the bed. She held my hair. She was pulling. She took some off. So in struggling to relieve myself from her, I had to hit my knee on the crotch of a bed.
She pushed me from behind, and I fell down. I landed with my finger. I landed on my fingers and my wrist. And that is my job. The slaps did not stop me from doing my nursing job.
In an interview with Joy News, specialist psychiatrist at the hospital, Dr. Pinaman Appel, outlined a number of challenges the hospital currently faces, especially with infrastructure, the huge shortfall in staff numbers, finances and debts totaling over 3.2 million Ghana cedis.
Most of our problems boils down to funds. As I told you earlier on, we were forced to even stop admitting for some time. I think for the past 2 weeks or so, we were forced to stop admitting for some time because we don't have funds running the hospital. And so when we need anything, we don't have money to do it. And that's why we are still pressing that the mental health board be constituted.
The sector minister, Sherry Aite, briefed the media what government was doing about the situation.
Very soon we'll put in place the board, and then also, within the bill, we need to establish a mental, health fund. And I think that this is a priority. We should at least try within these years to find seed money to get the fund established. We want to expand Pantan Hospital and then move this institution to Pantan and build nice facilities, football parks, recreational grounds. Then this will only be an outpatient, a visiting hospital.
She also promised to get a bus for the hospital to enable them continue with the Operation 600, which aims to decongest the hospital, and appealed to the private sector to adopt some of the wards as an interim measure.
President Mahama has presented to Parliament an amendment of the Public Holidays Act to make the birthday of the first president of Ghana, Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, a statutory public holiday. The president announced this at the Flagstaff House today when the Centenary Celebration Committee presented a report to him.
Once Parliament passes it, then it means that the president does not have to sign an executive instrument every year to announce the celebration.
The chairman, Professor Akila Kwasoya, led the members of the committee to present the report, which captures the entire centenary celebration. He said the committee is working to establish an appropriate information bank about the late leader.
There are two major things that are still outstanding, and those are to have a proper website, which will become an information bank, not only on Kwame Nkrumah himself, but on his times and his ideas and his colleagues and Ghana's history, in effect. We are also looking to develop an archive, a proper archive, which we can then receive the documents on Groja at the moment all over the world. A condition for getting those documents is having a proper location, properly ventilated and so on for it. And I'm happy to say that we'll not ask you for one single city, because as you recall, we were able to save some money from the celebrations, which will apply to the next stage.
President Mahama was impressed with how the committee succeeded in further projecting Nkrumah's image despite the budgetary constraints. He said a statue similar to one erected in Addis Ababa is one of the ways he intends to immortalize the first president.
We donated that statue to the AU, and so there is a second one. We intend, after the Kwame Nkrumah interchange has been finished, to erect it somewhere near the Kwame Nkrumah interchange as a lasting memorial, to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The Chief of Staff would work with you to see how we can bring to life these outstanding, projects that would, ingrain and consolidate his memory, for forever.
The committee pledged to duly account for all funds raised from the centenary celebrations.
Minister of Chieftaincy and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Seidu Danaa, has assumed office, having survived the protest over his appointment by some of the very chiefs he is supposed to work with, simply because he is blind. He has pledged to use his expertise and experience to deliver and open up opportunities for others like him. Joy News Walalam Johnson caught up with him to find out how he's coping in his new office.
Government some time back directed that all government institutions and public buildings be made accessible to all persons, including the physically challenged. But with a mandate such as Dr. Danaa's, how easily will he be managing his movements at post, being a man without sight? I try to find out if government is taking a great lead in that regard. But as evident here, in one of the state houses, adherence to that directive was absent. The entrance to the chieftaincy ministry, however, is disabled friendly, but not to the very top of the building. We are, however, told that Dr. Danaa knows his way out and in within the ministry, having worked there for close to 2 decades. His official office is ready in few days.
It's actually at the preparation stage. They're getting the place ready. And let's get into the minister's office, actually. Wow, there you go. As you can see, it's quite a big place. Comfortable seats and couch. And just right here is a painter getting the place ready. Right ahead, to the right, is actually the washroom, also at the preparation stage. But we were told by tomorrow, painting must have been over, curtains and blinds will be fixed, and it will be ready for him to walk in and start work.
Carrying out his duties might somehow come with some difficulty, but I tell you, he appends his signature, make his own calls among others. Finding lasting solutions to problems and the magic of retentive memory is his portion. To make it more easier for him, this is his laptop called the Braille Note.
Planner, address list, email.
It's
internet,
giving me the various
chat,
options.
Media center, navigation, book reader.
Book reader. So I'm now zeroing on the book reader. Enter.
Read book in which folder? Press enter for my books.
At the time, I thank God my memory was photographic. So with this, I think I count myself lucky that there's something like this.
Is there any way you would want to demonstrate maybe how to get an information on a newspaper for us to know how it works?
Well, that one is not yet here. We call it voice reader.
Okay.
I place the order, and I'm told I'll get in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
That one, you just put the newspaper on it, and it reads.
How do you append your signatures, or someone do that on your behalf?
I can do that. I put this finger here.
Okay.
As a guide. Then I put the pen here. Then I move it. Some people who have never had the chance to interact with people who don't see, that unfortunately have very wrong perception. In fact, excuse me, some people seem to think that when somebody has lost their sight and he cannot see, it's like he's a moron. But that is not correct. You can have somebody who is not, and he's very intelligent, and you may have eyes, and when you talk, he rather sees you to be somebody very faulty in your reasoning.
He has ordered for the note reader and a special phone that will aid his output.
It has also talking capacity, and they also have the braille. So this is the talking.
The time is 1:56 p.m.
1:56 p.m. But then if I were to be in a forum or a court or somewhere, I could then open it without pressing the voice. And then it gives the same thing. The time is 1:03, the same.
The journey he embarked upon to reach where he is now, one could only conclude that impairment is not incompetence.
We wish Dr. Danaa all the best in his new post. We're taking a break, we'll be back. In business, the Danaa Refinery is set to resume operations from the first week of March. This follows the completion of repair works on its refinery plant, which broke down in July last year due to some challenges with power supply. The state refinery last month secured about half of a $67 million facility from government to boost its operations. TOR is expected to start refining about 30,000 barrels of crude oil a day when it resumes. The Danaa refinery debt, meanwhile, currently stands at $350 million after government managed to clear almost $1 billion Ghana cedis over the past 4 years. It would require a capital injection of about $650 million to clear its debts and finance its operations. The National Petroleum Authority has vowed to sanction bulk supplies of aviation fuel that failed to honor their import commitments to the country. It follows a shortage of the product which compelled domestic airlines to cancel flights over the weekend.
If you can't deliver the product in 14 days before that, alert the NPA, because like I said, it takes us almost 4 weeks to get a product done. If they had alerted us, we wouldn't have had this shortage problem because we would have had the product here within 4 weeks. We started having this product 2 weeks or just over 2 weeks after they were supposed to have delivered the product. So MP is just going to get a little more serious with these bulk distribution companies on them reneging to deliver the products that they are contracted to deliver. And I think once we start sanctioning a few BDCs, I think sanity will prevail in our industry. The bulk distribution companies could not get the supplies from Abidjan, the refinery, because the Abidjan refinery had dedicated the stock to the French forces which were working in Mali. Because of that, we had to now get the supplies from Northwest Europe. What MPA did immediately while it asked the GUI partners to go to Togo and to go to Ivory Coast to get products is we issued emergency cargoes for delivery. The earliest delivery we got was the 20th of February. The next delivery we get in is around the 1st of March. The next delivery after that is about the 10th of March. My understanding is that the first ship should be in on Wednesday, and Thursday there will be delivery to the market by these vessels.
Residents and businesses in Kumasi have been complaining about the losses they're incurring as a result of the ongoing load shedding exercise. A good number of them say they often have to idle about because there is no electricity to facilitate their work, whilst others say they are having to pay twice what they spend on electricity to keep their generators running, an expense they say is draining them. Your News' Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin has this report.
The businesses, especially shop owners, tell Joe News sales have been very poor as a result of the frequent outages. Electrical and mechanical engineers at the Kumasi magazine idle here because there is no electricity to complete their jobs. Television repairers also find themselves in a similar situation. They also complain about destruction of their appliances and food items as a result of the emergency load shedding exercise. Some even blame the rise in theft in their communities to the load shedding.
So dum sono die e haye yi yentimi nya adwuma o chese on sa kuta adwuma no ma o ye no na fon senka yenya announcement kura se ye bedum na ke bede ye ho so
adwuma pi wo ho so se dey a lot of so like ya chekura 10 minutes na edum no adwuma bebrebe the electricity e dey o krum hand there very bad. See benya kenya de adwuma amanya fitafo ne weathers ne no nyina adwuma de collapse because of electricity omudum no maso.
The bitter residents expressed their displeasure and called on the government to map out a strategy to resolve the problem.
Said the light for the yentiasie mammy will bear say he was a fridge me once so I am light net mama. Se see ya so ye na yesu so ye dum light and generator na dia ye fititire kwakatiri se see ye hu dia ye wi so ye search light be ye ntiase enti dia mo ye no ye ni nye ho
light no ze dia aban ye sere no omo ye kakra even at was enko odum no aye ye ba no pa na ngom ye adwuma na ye koda na odum no kura nka ye haye ba wo ba no pa 6 o'clock na ye dum light ebo be ye 1 no so. But
this man says government must not be blamed for the load shedding.
So previous governments no got to tell generator BC why so light problem no but sanu man na who sanu man fine and they say you show sanu man before you default to be ma buy na asana before to be ahead am buy in Ghana for say nya abotre you say bia Ghana o man pin bet my bia fa ho amaye.